Hello and welcome. My name is Carol Carter, and I'm the founder and CEO of Global Minded. Global Minded is dedicated to creating a capable, diverse talent pipeline to get more women, people of color, ability status, LGBTQIA, any way you can define diversity into the education, economic mobility, and leadership pipeline. And we do that in a number of different ways. We have an annual conference. It's been virtual the last 2 years, but this coming June, it's going to be live. And we've got early bird rates right now if you want to sign up for that. It's June 22nd, 23rd, and 24th. And we're looking forward to seeing everybody in person after missing you the last few years. And then we have monthly equity sessions, and you're in for a real treat today. This is the STEM equity team, and it's led by Paula, who I'll introduce in just a couple of minutes. And we have a couple of other special events I want to get on your radar screen. One is Monday, we've got our health equity team with leaders from Deloitte and Johnson & Johnson and PricewaterhouseCoopers, several different people looking at the impact in education and employment on mental health and wellness. So that'll be very interesting, same time period on Monday. And then on September the 28th, we have a session we're doing with Amazon Web Services called The Impact of Board Diversity, what it's like to serve on public boards, private boards, 501c3, and what it's going to take to really get true diversity into boards and C-suite leadership. So we invite you to join us for that. And then finally, we have our 2021 Inclusive Leader Awards will be happening on November the 3rd at 6 o'clock Eastern time. So 15 incredible people will be given those awards this year, and we invite all of you in our Global Mind Inclusive community to join us for that. But without further ado, I want to introduce our STEM equity panel leader, Paula Garcia Todd. And we're celebrating all of these incredible, talented people in STEM as part of our Hispanic heritage lineup of heroes this month. So Paula has a steadfast desire to help patients through pharmaceutical technologies. She's made significant contributions in drug delivery through her work at Dow Chemical, DuPont, and now IFF, International Flavors and Fragrances, for the past 18 years. Her vast experience ranges from process engineering and manufacturing settings with small and large molecule active pharmaceutical ingredients to researching and creating patented polymer innovations to solve critical formulation issues with pharmaceutical companies around the world. Her technical success led to various customer-facing roles, including marketing and product management, progressing to her current position as Global Strategic Manager at IFF. She is currently responsible for a $500 million portfolio of pharmaceutical ingredients found in 1 out of every 3 oral solid medications that are taken globally. So she's also a global leader, and she has a real passion for young people, education, and STEM learning. She's also the mom of some incredible children, and it's our great pleasure to introduce you, Paula, and your wonderful panelists. Welcome, everyone.
Carol, thank you so much. Such a pleasure to be here. And I am so excited to share this group of panelists with all of you. As Carol mentioned, this is Hispanic Heritage Month. We are doing these monthly STEM panels, and what better topic to discuss than the talent pipeline that is really needed to increase the number of Latinos and Hispanics in STEM fields. So today, I have 4 amazing individuals. I'm going to let them introduce themselves, and then we'll get started. We will be taking questions throughout the event, so please feel free to use the Q&A, and we would be happy to take any of your questions. So I will start with Mr. Randy Blanco.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Randy Blanco, and I am a student at Penn State going into my 5th year studying mechanical engineering, and I have a minor in engineering leadership development. So I am a big part of the Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers here on campus, and I'm also a big part of the multicultural engineering program. I've had some internships with Lockheed Martin, with the Applied Research Lab here on campus, and with Toyota. And I will be going into full-time with Lockheed Martin in the next coming year. And I'm excited to be here.
Nice. Congratulations. And if I'm not mistaken, through LinkedIn, you are also a Student Leadership Award winner through Great Minds in STEM. Is that correct? Did you just win that award?
That is correct. It was real sudden. I think it was earlier this week.
Nice work. Congratulations. Awesome.
Thank
All
you.
right. So up next, we have Dr. Minerva Cordero.
Hi, everyone. I'm very happy to be here this afternoon sharing with you and this amazing group of panelists. I'm a professor of mathematics at the University of Texas at Arlington. I do research in mathematics in finite geometries. I'm also the Senior Associate Dean for Graduate Studies and Research at the University of Texas at Arlington. I'm originally from Puerto Rico, did my undergraduate degree there, and came to the United States for a PhD in mathematics and have been here since then. I look forward to our conversation this afternoon.
Awesome. And she and I share something in common. We are both if-then ambassadors through AAAS, which is the American Association for the Advancement of Sciences. And we both serve as role models to bring more women into STEM fields. That's actually how I know her. So
Yes.
so happy to have you here. So up next, we've got Mr. Aaron Cortes.
Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you all and to share this panel with amazing women and gentlemen, and someone so successful already at such a young age. So my name is Aaron Cortes. I work at the Northeastern Illinois University. In that capacity, I support the STEM pathway for high school students that are low income and first generation to go into the field. Been doing this job for like about 14 years. I don't know, time just keeps on passing. I'm also a instructor for the computer science department. And as a side thing, I am also a emerging leader for the Chicago Council on Global Affairs. And I'm also looking forward to this conversation.
Awesome. And I'm so excited. I think there's a lot that you can contribute to our conversation today. So thank you so much for being here. And last but not least, we have Dr. Patricia Silveyra.
Hi, everyone. I'm Patricia. I'm an associate professor at Indiana University, Bloomington, in the Department of Environmental and Occupational Health. I am also, I lead a research lab where we study sex differences in lung disease and lung inflammation funded by NIH. I also serve at the National Academies as co-chair of the New Voices in Science, Engineering, and Medicine and the Board on Higher Education and Workforce. And I'm a past board member and treasurer for SACNAS and currently serve as the PI for the SACNAS conference grant. I'm originally from Argentina, where I got my master's and PhD, and I came to the States as a postdoc to Penn State in 2008 and later work at UNC and now work in Indiana.
Awesome. So thank you for being here. I'm so excited to have all of you. Okay, so let's get started. So the topic of hand, right? I think we're all very aware of the need to bring more underrepresented students into STEM fields. I'm an engineer myself, and I'm very aware that only 2% of engineers are Latinas like myself in this country. I don't know if there are any other statistics that we could share to really provide a nice foundation and grounding to everyone watching to really understand what is this current state of affairs for Latinos in STEM. Dr. Cordero, do you have anything to share on that?
Yes, actually, I look at these numbers in a very regular basis because I see the need that we have to graduate more students with STEM degrees. Actually, in general, there was a report in 2012 by the President of the United States, the Council of Advisors, that said we need to graduate 1 million more PhDs in STEM fields in order for our country to remain, to maintain its leadership in the world. And unfortunately, we're not getting there. And as we know, the population of Hispanics in this country is growing. We're about 18% of the population, yet in the STEM workforce, we only represent 7%. So Paula, you're definitely one of only 2%, like you said, is a very small number. And this number has gone a little bit up, this 7%. It used to be 5% for a long time, actually. in the late 90s, it was about 2% of Hispanics in the STEM workforce. So the number has increased, but it's still not where it needs to be. The good news is that Hispanics make a larger percentage of the students attending college, which is a really very positive thing. So, and also they do get a good number of bachelor's degree. That number has almost doubled in the last 10 years. But we're not there yet. Again, we're only 7% of the STEM workforce, yet we are 18% of the population.
Yeah, that's very useful to really put it all in perspective. So thank you for that. So I'm going to turn it over to our student panelists, to Randy, to give us some insight. What are some hardships for Hispanic students interested in pursuing STEM? And I know that some of them could be complex, but if you already have any thoughts or ideas of how to alleviate some of them, I'd love to hear your insight on that as well.
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest hardships that Hispanic students encounter when first going into your first class in STEM at a university is the lack of representation. In a lot of universities, going into your first class and not seeing people from the same background or that just look like you is hard for your confidence in the major. And I think a big part of STEM is you having confidence in yourself to be able to go that mile and get to the end goal of getting your degree. So to alleviate that, I would say expanding the different, well, for the student, I would say get involved in whatever organizations are available. But from a different perspective, any organizations being able to expand, because I know there's a lot of organizations that target specific schools or specific locations, but there's not that much expansion, I think. So there's a lot of focus in some schools and they get a lot of support and they get a lot of programs. But if we can expand that to the ones that don't get targeted, it would increase that number of Hispanics in STEM, I think.
Yeah, that's very insightful, and I really appreciate that. I'm curious, Erin, I get the sense that you probably work with a lot of students in your current role. What are your thoughts on the hardships that Hispanic students face?
Where do we begin? It's unfortunate, right? But I think, like the research is saying this, and I guess our own observation and experiences, right? I think Randy mentioned it very well, the representation, right? When you don't have faculty of color, Latino faculty that have the same experiences, right? Because I think sometimes also it's looking at if you are from the first generation a path, right? You might not match someone that's coming with an advanced degree coming from a number of generational wealth, right? I mean, that's completely different experience, right? So I think, it's not even at the college level, it's really starting a lot earlier, right? And what is the access to development capacity, right? One of the things that we could see, and Dr. Cordero, you could tell me, I think this data is showing a lot, is that there are a number of Latino students that are going into the STEM fields, but they are matched by the math coursework, right? And so they might want to be an engineer in computer science, but then it comes to the math coursework, and that is a gatekeeper, right? What are we doing, to make sure that they're successful, right? I mean, I cannot go into computer science if I don't understand some advanced concepts of math, right? And so I think that starts becoming a problem. The other additional hardship is just the ability of our communities that are underserved, underfunded, to understand the pathways, right? Like what it is to be an engineer, right? What it is to be a computer scientist, what it is just to be in the field and end up being in pharmaceuticals, right? I mean, there's so many branches that unfortunately in many of our communities, all we see is doctors, right? That's a STEM field, doctors, right? And so I think, we're changing a little bit that. I think much more crucially, and I'll stop with this one, but more crucially is the low numbers of males of color that are entering universities and colleges, right? I think it is great that we're seeing a lot more women going in. I mean, it's about time that we're having that ability, right? It's unfortunate, but that it's good, right? About 60% of the youth that I support are female. And sometimes 80%, right? But males are not coming through. And I think that's also has to do with a lot of the societal needs of supporting family, helping out with the family, and also sometimes the pressure of you need to earn, right? And so sometimes that also kind of shifts. Not that women will not be asked that, but I think it tends to be a little bit of a push in society, right? That males need to go into work much more quicker, right? So I think, those are some of them. And, again, it is a long list, but I think those might be some very key ones.
Yeah, thank you for that. Dr. Silveyra, do you have any other ones that we could kind of touch on?
Yeah, I can only speak from my experience with my own students because I studied in my home country where obviously I did not face these issues, but my students are graduate students for the most part. And some of the hardships that they face are related to the fact that they're isolated, that they don't have any role models or peers that look like them. So that causes a lot of identity issues, like they feel that they don't belong. They get a lot of stereotype threat or imposter syndrome, and then they don't have somebody to talk with because there's very few of us in the leadership that would understand this perhaps cultural or specific to Hispanics problems or issues, right? Sometimes you just need somebody to listen or to agree with you. So the people that they encounter don't really know how to deal with them, don't really know how to give them proper advice. So that increases their sense of isolation. So a lot of times they feel really, really lonely and they don't know where to go.
Yeah, that is a very important point you've raised. Thank you for that. So let's talk about some examples that maybe you've seen throughout the years of effective programs to attract and retain Hispanic students into STEM. Dr. Cordero, do you have any examples to share on that?
Yes, and actually, we need to look at the issue of increasing the pipeline starting from the very early years, starting in elementary school. We know that by the time that the kids go to high school, either they have decided they're going to pursue a STEM career or not. And so it's really important that started at the early years, 4th, 5th, 6th grade. Those are very critical. And that's the time when we need to expose the students in summer camps, in summer programs that are geared towards these disciplines. For example, at my school, we have a summer program that is called Girl Engineering. It's only for girls in 5th and 6th grade to do engineering together. So you don't have this competition of the boys versus the girls. So summer programs are key when you're talking about elementary, junior high students. Similarly for high school students, then you need to provide a lot of support in the summer. A program that has worked very well in this regard is Text Prep. Is the Texas pre-freshman engineering program that started at UT San Antonio. And it's a program where high school students come here for 4 summers to do more enrichment in mathematics. Like our friend Aaron mentioning here is key, that they have strong mathematical skills. And so at the high school level, then we want to have those opportunities in the summer. Research says that it is in the summer when our students, especially those from low socioeconomic status, they fall behind. So in the academic year, they're making progress. Then the summer comes, they don't have enrichment activities, but others who are capable, who are able, their parents have the means, the financial support to do that, they do that. So summer is key for attracting underrepresented minorities, especially Hispanics, low socioeconomic students into STEM. And then once you're in college, like Randy mentioned, being involved with different organizations, being a part of SACNAS, being a part of SHPE, like Randy is. So student organizations, so that they feel like Dr. Silveyra mentioned, they have a connection, there is a group, there's a community, there is a network in there. So at each level, we have to do something to attract them, to bring them, and eventually graduate them.
Yeah, those are all great examples. And I love that you also go back into the outreach portion of K through 12 and the importance of that. Because if we're starting in high school, we're just too late along the
Yeah,
along
and
the line.
one thing that I forgot, if I may, Paula, especially when you're dealing with elementary school children, the parents. It's so important to talk to the parents and for the parents. And I believe you have a question about this coming up, but I want to make sure it's key. Whenever we have one of these summer programs in here, I make sure we always have a session for parents where I talk to the parents about, listen, you need to imagine your son or your daughter is an engineer, is a doctor, is an astronaut, because if you don't imagine them, they will never get there.
Yeah, very, very, very true. Yes. Erin, do you have any examples as well from your experiences of programs that have been really successful in recruiting and
definitely.
retaining?
Yeah, quite a bit. I think, I will look at a couple programs that are very unique to support students into the path, not only for STEM, but just in general, right? I think Dr. Cordero was mentioning this, right? How do you make sure that you provide those services, that structure, right? Those resources across, right? And so I think looking at TRIO programs across the United States, I mean, TRIO programs are $1 billion funding a year, right? And so like looking at that and seeing it in your campuses, they're hidden, right? They're like the program that is in the basement of some PE complex, right? And so unfortunately looking at them, because those TRIO programs tend to be pre-college and college and graduate school, right? I mean, and that is mainly focusing on minorities, right? Getting minorities across, right? So I think, that's a good place. All TRIO programs are different. There are programs that are very specific to developing STEM skills, and there's some that are just really making sure college readiness occurs. I think at the state level, you are looking also at 21st century grants, right? Like 21st century community learning centers, which are also resources at the state level that some states offer after school programming through a number of organizations. I think looking at a bigger picture, like through, many of us looking at, the STEM push network, the STEM ecosystems, they're like big networks of people that are working towards this, and they're doing the service, right? The outreach, the mentorship. I think there's a lot of it. It's always hidden. It's always like the hidden gem, right? Just like our youth, right? They're hidden. Nobody knows that they have the talent, right? So I think it's very similar to that. And then you have National Science Foundation, right? You have a number of National Science Foundation programs that are in many schools and universities that, it might not be a highlighted program within the university, but might be assuring that these individuals are able to graduate, knowing that also National Foundation, when they're looking at, achievement and goals and outcomes, they're looking at diversifying the workforce, right? And in many of them, broader participation, right? So I think, those touch, I think just on our end here at Northeastern University, we just came from Puerto Rico, where we took students, high school students, to do a week-long project with students in University of Puerto Rico, Rio Piedras, where they work with pre-college students doing underwater robotics, right? And so like our youth leading that work and being able to like engage in culture, but also in developing engineering skills, right? When they're like 16, 17, right? I mean, I think that's powerful. That also speaks that there was 6 females and only 4 males, right? And again, it goes back to the numbers. But I think those things are out there. It's just a matter of communicating and disseminating those opportunities broadly.
Yeah, those are some amazing programs that you've brought to light, and I'm hoping our audience has taken a lot of notes on those, because those are fantastic. Dr. Silveyra, I don't know if you have any specific examples of. I know you work with a lot of graduate students at a collegiate level, or even like at an outreach approach. What are some examples that you have of programs that are very influential?
Yeah, we have several summer programs for undergraduates that are specifically tailored for underrepresented minority students, and they seem to work very well because students get paired up with peer mentors that are graduate students, and those are very, very helpful in helping them navigate the process of applying. A lot of times they don't have anybody to ask, and I can tell you, every student, ask any Hispanic who is in science what they were told when they told their counselor in high school that they wanted to pursue science. Most of them, or a majority of them, were told, oh, this probably is not what you want to do. Like, they are discouraged at, just, I don't know why, but they are all discouraged. So the fact that they get an opportunity to visit a research institution or a place where they actually get to talk to graduate students or with scientists that look like them, that can explain their path, and also being told, oh, me too, I was told not to do it and I still did it, that makes a world of difference.
Yeah, absolutely. Very, very true. And I think a lot of Hispanic students can relate to that story. Randy, do you have any examples of outreach that either you've done as a counselor or as a student that have impacted you in your decision to pursue engineering?
Pursuing engineering. So personally, I didn't know about STEM until like mid high school. There wasn't much outreach that in my community that I knew of that I could pursue to start pursuing engineering or even learn about it. The reason why I got into engineering was because I was just good at math in high school and it seemed interesting, but I didn't know too much. Once I got to Penn State, like first day I encountered SHPE, and that was a real big organization that got me like keep going. Like first semester was really hard, even like trying my best. I didn't do the greatest, but having that group of people, having upper level students who I saw as role models pushed me to want to be like them and give back to the community like the community gave to me. So organizations like SHPE, I think, are big influences to retain students.
Yeah, and I love that you brought up SHPE, because I think what SHPE offers, because I was also a SHPE student at Penn State, it offers that sense of family, right, away from family. So let's hit on that topic a little bit, because I know we touched on it a little bit, but Dr. Silveyra, how important do you think family is in really guiding a student to consider a STEM career?
I guess it depends on, where your origins are, what country your family comes from, where you come from. Hispanics, comprehend a variety of countries, but one thing that is common is that we do not operate in isolation from our family. That's a major cultural difference with majority culture in school. So a lot of times our parents are involved in our decisions, whether it is just asking questions or being part of them. So we don't have that level of independence that other students have. And that could be a way of disconnection or like a cultural barrier or inability to communicate or to really understand each other. But family support is really important because we need to feel like we belong. So a lot of times we have our familia, like our actual family, but then we create a familia of scientists around us. We always, at SACNAS, we always say it's the SACNAS familia. Like it's a place where you go and you talk to them and you discuss things as if it was your family. It's your science family. So it's something that is very, very valuable for Hispanic students. And, it doesn't need to be their biological parents. It needs to be a group of people that you discuss with.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Yes, there's the family that there's a family that's chosen and a family that's just naturally brought to you, right? So both play a very important role. Erin, do you have any comments on that, on the importance of having family involvement in those decisions for a student?
Yes, for sure. That could determine if an individual is going to go even to higher ed, right? I think and get any kind of area of interest on STEM. I think one important thing is also to understand, who we're serving, right? I think, I both of my parents have college degrees, right? I even if I struggle in the United States to understand what was the process of going to college, right? Because I'm an immigrant as well, right? And so it's different when you have someone that has a degree and could tell you need to study. Studying is relevant. It's important, right? Like when that is really not part of the makeup, right? When we're talking about like individuals that come to improve their life in the United States, or that through generations are struggling to succeed, right? I think it's really hard to just expect that people are just going to be successful, right? And so I think, the family involvement is really for youth especially, right? It's something that we need to take a little bit more of an interest and demystify the STEM field, right? Demystify math, right? I think that's a big key problem, right? That everyone's like, everybody could read and write, but don't talk about numbers because we cannot do that. And sometimes it's easier, right? Like mathematics tends to be a international language, right? It's something that we all do the same way in some form, right? So I think that is very important to make sure that it's not just about engineering and mathematics and science. It's really about like, can you feel comfortable with education, right? And education being, a path to like success, and that, family generational change occurs through that process, right? I think it's just, we hear a lot of like, just somebody made $1 million in TikTok and that's the pathway, but that's not really the pathway, right? Or that somebody became a soccer superstar. Well, that's a very small percentage, right? And so I think we need to look at like, how do we impact this nation through, our work in these fields, right? And I'm not saying that you shouldn't be a soccer star player, right? That's great if you have the skill, but that number is very small, right? And I think, I think helping families, including them in the process at higher ed, right? Like if you're in university, is including the families of your students, right? And sharing, why is it important? Why are they putting so many hours into all this stuff and not coming home, right? Like if we could be explaining that rather than like, it's completely adjacent. It has nothing to do with the growth of a student, right? I think that would be very powerful.
Yes. And I would say I personally had the opposite experience. I come from a family of engineers. My father was an engineer, my uncles were engineer, my brothers, my grandfather. So I wasn't given a choice. The only choice I was given is which type of engineer will you become, which turned out great for me, but absolutely family is very influential in those decisions.
Yeah, if I may add something, and I think Aaron touched on that, especially when you have first generation college students, and I was the first generation. My parents didn't even complete elementary school. Yet we're 6 children, and the 4 girls, the sisters, all 4 went into STEM. 2 of us have PhDs in mathematics. One has a master's in chemistry. The other one has a master's in computer science. And my parents, no education at all, but the value, no schooling at all, but the value of an education was there in their minds. And so family, the fact that they were saying, no, the way to a better future is through education. That's the message that we have to work really hard to convey to the parents of all of these children, right? So when I meet with this parent, this is what I'm telling. And then at the end of the, I have a chart that talks about even the salary of the people in these careers for them to see, no, indeed, not only you're going to be making a contribution to society to make things better, but also you're going to make it better for yourself and for your family, because the financial resources are coming there, because like Aaron said, not everyone's going to be a soccer star. So through STEM, there is so much that can be done. And it's very, very important that parents understand that, because again, if the parents don't see that, their children are never going to get there where we want them to get.
Yeah, that is absolutely true. Yes, thank you so much for sharing that. We've spent a lot of time talking about students and the student experience, how to recruit and retain students, but once students graduate, there's still more barriers to be experienced in the workplace, unfortunately. And so I'd love to hear from some of you, maybe even from personal experience, what are some barriers that Hispanic professionals in industry and academia face? So I don't know, Dr. Silveyra, I don't know if you want to start with you.
Sure, I can start. Yeah, I can tell you from my own experience and also experiences of my colleagues and friends that I made through my science familia. The number one issue is isolation. A lot of times we are the only one in the department or the only one in the school or the building. And, it's hard to know who to go to for advice, who to trust for advice, and, when to say yes, when to say no to things. And also the lack of role models or mentors that advocate for us, like our sponsors that put, that have our best interest, that poses a lot of issues, because the decisions that you make at the beginning of your professional career are going to impact how much you make later, how likely you are to get promoted, how, the connections that you make and how successful you're going to be. So some institutions like mine, for example, are doing what is called a cohort recruitment, where instead of being like the only one, you are surrounded by people that look like you. And that not only removes that isolation part and that, you know, kind of tokenism that a lot of times you face, but also creates this sense of community, friendliness, and peer mentoring. That being said, we still lack upper leadership mentors that look like us, and we still have, you know, to deal with microaggressions, you know, because the field sometimes is not used to seeing people like us, and there's this perception that we are given freebies or that we are given all this help. And I can tell you, for example, I had a grant, a K award, and I was trying to get a student in my lab, and the student went to another lab, and the PI said, well, her grant is not as important as mine because it's a diversity grant, as if I didn't have to go through peer review or everything else, right? So there are people who will make those comments, and, you know, that there's, you know, stories, everybody has stories, right? And then the other issue that we face when we're isolated and we are kind of, we face this tokenism, is that people will send us my underrepresented students, right? So then we do a lot of invisible mentoring and invisible work because it's their student, but you're providing all the mentoring. So I can tell you those were the hardest or the biggest issues that I had in my former 2 institutions. But right now where I work is so much better, and we're working into, you know, feeding the upper leadership and being able to provide a better environment for who comes after us.
Yeah, those are all very powerful examples. Dr. Cordero, do you have any other examples or stories to share?
Oh, Dr. Silveyra had a great summary of the things. And it is so true, not having the mentors and then the sponsors. Once you achieve certain milestones, having those sponsors that are going to help promote you to the next level. And what is interesting is, like, the sponsor, the mentor does not necessarily have to be a Hispanic person. I would tell you, if I decided to pursue a PhD in mathematics, is because a professor, a non-Hispanic woman, told me you should go and get a PhD, right? So she was my mentor. Didn't look at all like me, and actually very far from my personality or anything, but she took an interest in me and she said, no, you can do this. So our mentors don't necessarily have to look like us. What really happens is, what I'm seeing in my colleagues is that Latinos, Hispanics, we are less assertive than other people that go after getting those mentors. So we are more shy, more reserved. And then also the non-Hispanic, more senior faculty, perhaps do not feel as comfortable, right, approaching us. So one of the things that I communicate with junior faculty is, like, be a little bit more assertive, talk to people. If you're writing a grant, you can ask someone in your department, would you take a look at my grant, right? Because most likely they're going to say yes, even though they're not the ones initiating that contact. So not having the mentors, and not having the people that look like us is an issue. But at least I see a solution in people becoming a little bit more assertive and trying to get the mentorship that they need from the colleagues that they have at this time. Because the reality is, in the college campuses, in the STEM disciplines, we have very, very few Hispanic faculty. So luckily, we don't need to necessarily just depend on them to be our mentors, but other people can serve as mentors as well.
Yeah, no, I'm really glad you brought up the topic of mentors and sponsors. I mean, I think that's very critical. Randy, do you have any thoughts on the role of mentors and how they can help and influence students in STEM?
Yeah, I think mentorship is huge for the success. It can really help someone break the barriers that they face as a student or even as a professional. Having that connection with someone, like an actual personable connection, will give someone like accountability to continue down the path. Because if someone starts to feel down, but they have that mentorship, someone to look up to, someone to go to if they're just a little bit lost or encounter some barrier, it's big to give them that confidence and that support in order to overcome these barriers. It also, a good mentorship, I feel like a good mentorship allows access to more resources that you might not by yourself know about. And being able to find those resources is big. I've been on both ends of the mentorship line, and having a mentor, they've provided a bunch of insights, a bunch of skills that help me personally to grow as a character, and also to help me with progressing through STEM. And being a mentor lead for the multicultural engineering program, I try to relay those skills, all those skills that I've learned to younger students, and pretty much provide the support that I would have appreciated as a younger student, giving them the resources that they need, the tools that they need to succeed, and making it personable where it's not too disconnected I think is big. So definitely mentorship, sponsorship is key for success.
That's great. And I love that you've learned and taken from a mentoring relationship, and you've passed it forward as well as a mentor. That's really fantastic to see and really important.
Paula,
Erin,
can I
yes, of course,
say,
of course.
so,
Go ahead.
something that Dr. Cordero said made me think about the fact that, the fact that we are not assertive is not something, random. It comes with cultural expectations for Hispanic women. A lot of times, even from a very, very early age, we're told to wait our turn, to only speak when we are asked to. So it takes a lot of coaching to really understand and make the junior faculty realize that this is not the place to act this way. You actually have to mimic something that is different from the culture that you were brought up in, right? So it's a process. It doesn't happen overnight, but having this kind of coaching or peer mentoring really, really helps.
Yeah, and I think it's a combination of culture, but also what we're taught in school, because in school, we're taught that if we study hard, we get that A, or, we do well on that test or whatnot. And then you go into the workforce and you realize you're not necessarily just given things because you work hard. You actually have to be assertive and ask for things. And nowhere along the line is that ever taught to us, right? So that's another barrier from that perspective. Erin, do you have any comments on mentorship or sponsorship?
Sure. So a few things, and I think this is again puts everything back into even like the reflection of the panel. Most of my mentors have been women, right? I mean, most of the people that have led me to be successful have been women, not males, right? Which, I have had male mentors, but it tends to happen that has been female mentors that have been much more willing, right, to show you the path and help you grow. But looking at this mentorship and sponsorship, I think you were mentioned as you come out of the university with your degree and you're moving into a professional space, right? Regardless of what that might be, academia or business or a company, right? I think one of the things that we keep on experiencing is the lack of opportunity to be in internships. And internships, not like we just put you here to do some filing, right? Like not that, like real internships where like you like young college students have a chance to engage on the actual work, right? A shadowing of professionals, right? I think a lot of those things don't occur as often, and if they occur in spaces of privilege. And what I mean by that is those that could not have to work and go into this, right, could do it, right? So like because a lot of the internships nowadays are like unpaid internships, right? So I think, changing the dynamic of like internships being paid to help out the growth of the diversity pool, right? Because, people need to live, right? They need to afford their meals in campus, right? Like it doesn't happen for free, right? Nothing is ever free. So I think, looking at how do we, promote that internships and job shadowings and things of this nature for college students as they're transitioning to their employment, that there are actually financial incentives as well, right? They're not already coming out with like a huge debt, right? Now they're like also have to do all this free work. And, I think, we all know that, free work doesn't happen in certain areas and certain places, right? It only happens in minority spaces. It only happens of those that, don't have access, to opportunities. So I think, looking back at that, how do we make sure that like the system, the structure changes, and it could change from our end, right? Can I give my RA-ship to someone that, needs some more than the person that I know that are going to come and say, knock on the door, hey, I want this RA-ship, and that tend to be the mainstream student, right? I mean, like, how do I also differentiate that? And not only but like TAs or any student like that, right? And so I think, mentorship and sponsorship is very important, and seeking it, right? Like how you both say, like almost everybody is saying this, how do we help out so that individuals are able to seek it and understand when the mentorship is really begin on a truthful way, right? On a supportive way versus like, I just need to say that I'm going to mentor you for the sake of doing it to check off another box in my faculty thing, right? But really it's just about like being much more aware, right? Like maybe working with our institutions to develop certain understanding of what it is to serve Hispanics, right? Serve Latinos and the broad spectrum of Latinos, right? So I think that is very, very important to do in the institutions of higher ed. How do we train staff so that they could be inclusive, right? Versus, what we all have experienced. I think, we could do quite a bit to change that.
Yeah, absolutely. Very, very important points that you've made. Yes. And so as you talked about the community of Latinos, I couldn't help but think about SACNAS and SHPE and all the familias that we create amongst ourselves. Randy, I'm curious if you could talk a little bit about, your experiences within SHPE and, what that has meant to you as a student, and what do you think the benefit is of these Latino communities?
Yeah, so as I mentioned before, I was a part of SHPE since my first day at Penn State, but I didn't initially find them. They actually found me at a orientation. They said, I think they saw me and they brought me over to their booth and I learned about them. And they've been one of the biggest impacts, and I would credit them as the reason for a lot of the experiences that I've gotten. They provide, for SHPE as a student, they provide a bunch of different conferences, workshops, things that you're not really taught in the classroom, but are crucial for career development, for any type of seeking out for experiences. And for me, I've gotten co-ops and I've gotten internships through the organization just by them having the opportunity there. And of course, it was up to me to take advantage of the opportunity, but the opportunity was in front of me. They were able to provide that. And at like the National SHPE Convention, going there and seeing all these companies out there seeking Hispanic people is big. You're not put in a competition pool with a bunch of other people who might have different privileges, but you're put in there on the same starting line, I think. And that is big for Hispanic students. Having that, given the opportunities and the different resources by SHPE, I think were critical for a lot of the experiences that I've gotten.
Yeah, those are amazing examples. Thank you so much for sharing, Randy. Dr. Silveyra, I know that you are very, very active with SACNAS. I'd love to hear your perspective on this too.
Sure. Well, SACNAS was born out of a need of increasing representation. The story is that there was a AAAS meeting and there were 5 Native American scientists. They got into an elevator and they said, if this elevator falls, that's it. There will be no more Native American scientists in this country. So they decided to create SACNAS. This was 47 years ago. And nowadays there is about 8,000 members and who serve a community of 25,000 plus people. And there are 130 chapters around the country that help students create community basically and conduct different activities that are not only for their professional development, but also to communicate science to their respective communities. And then SACNAS has a conference every year. It's the largest interdisciplinary diversity STEM conference that there is. It is funded by NIH. And in that conference, the motto is that you go to that conference and you don't have to check out your culture at the door. A lot of times what the students experience is that they have to be the scientist in one environment and they can be the Hispanic or Native American in another one. And at SACNAS, we embrace you who you are. You are a scientist, but you also are who you are. So I send all my students to the first conference to be SACNAS, whether they are an underrepresented student or not. because it is a much different environment to be the first place where you present your science. So you present your science and you also attend workshops and you interact with people who look like you and are in different levels of leadership, or professors, or professionals in industry, in government. So it is a place where you see yourself in your future represented. So I think it makes a major impact, and I think every student should go to SACNAS as their first conference. In addition to that, for professionals, SACNAS puts together leadership training, the Summer Leadership Institute and the Advanced Leadership Institute. That's where I actually met Minerva. And so in those trainings, you learn to, build your career around your goals. And also how to implement change in organizations. So you get, all the principles from business leadership applied to science. And of course, you build networks that are, long lasting. So everybody should join SACNAS.
That was amazing. Everyone will join SACNAS after this meeting, I'm sure. That was phenomenal. Awesome. Okay, so I think we're getting close to the end here, and I'm just going to throw out a question to anyone who might have some experience or feedback on here. I'd love to hear if you have any good resources or scholarships that Hispanic students could tap into, anything that would be useful to Hispanic or Latino students. I think some of these organizations that we talked about, like SHPE and SACNAS, they tend to offer scholarships. Great Minds in STEM is also, another organization that is very supportive of the Hispanic community. They have awards, but they also have scholarships with some major funding from large corporations. Anyone else? Anything else? Who are we missing?
Yeah, I would say that it depends on the university too. For the biggest way to find the resources that are available is to connect with the multicultural department at your university, and they can connect you with a bunch of the resources. But for just personal experience, the Hispanic Scholarship Fund is a big one. That's, I think, one of the top scholarships for Hispanics, as well as SHPE themselves. They have a scholarship, and as you mentioned, Great Minds in STEM.
Anyone else?
Well, also, I think Randy mentioned, the universities have many scholarships, and actually more than I ever even knew that were there. So I was surprised once when I learned how much is disbursed in scholarships at my own institution, which I was not aware of. And so now I tell everyone when I meet with them, especially with my group of Hispanic students, potential students and their parents, is check our scholarship website, because there is so much there that we're not even aware of that exists. So definitely check the schools that you're planning on going to and the schools that you're attending, because there are lots of scholarships that are not really well advertised.
Yeah, absolutely right. And a lot of alumni give back to very particular scholarships as well. And so, as a student in a college environment, like Randy said, visiting the multicultural, however it's named in your university, right? But there should be a multicultural office that can provide those resources. And if you're a high school student looking at colleges and universities, please ask if those universities have those resources, because not all universities do. So it's also very important to know that you will be supported as a Hispanic and Latino student in whatever university environment you choose. And so these offices become very critical to providing these students the support that they need.
Yeah, and I would add, for those students interested in STEM at every level, if they can contact a researcher who is funded by NIH. NIH has something called a Diversity Supplement that can support research in their lab from as early as high school and at all career levels. And that's something that a lot of people don't know, both the PIs and the students. And they're fairly short to write, and they take a couple of months to get approved. They don't go through the peer review process that takes a long time. And they can create these relationships and start generating data for, if you later want to join the PhD program in the same institution that that professor, then you already have some publications with them that is much better than not having any connection.
Yeah, what a fantastic tidbit there. I had no idea about that either. That's awesome. Really, really great. All right, good. I've checked the Q&A box. I do not see any other questions coming in. So at this point, I would like to thank all of my fabulous panelists. I think there was just a lot of amazing information that was shared today. Thank you so much for your time. Thanks for being here. And thank you, all of you watching. I hope you got something very meaningful out of the discussion today. And I'm going to pass it back to Carol. Thank you, Carol, for the opportunity to have this panel.
Thank you so much. And I just want to reiterate that it is so important culturally for students to be affiliated with the, culture that they come from. And then what Global Minded provides is a big tent where people from all cultures can learn to work well with each other and really learn about the richness that is that really inclusive diversity. So we hope that you all will come with some of your students next June as well. And Aaron's been there before with some of his first gen students, part of the TRIO program. And it's really wonderful for students who are first gen and from, challenging zip codes or whatever, to meet leaders from all over the United States, not necessarily those in their discipline, although we do have a STEM track, we have a tech track, we have a track for policy in different areas, but it's really powerful for students to see themselves as cross-disciplinary leaders who can be those people making a difference in society and politics, and not just in the company or the foundation where they might work when they graduate, or the research, capacity if they end up getting a PhD and staying at a university. So that's really what we're about, is honoring the culture and the main few ways that different people identify, and then celebrating the different ways that we all can be resourced and enriched when we're able to work with people from all different backgrounds. So especially at this time in the United States where there's a lot of division, we really feel like it's such a turning point for people to all really celebrate their culture, where they're from, and their origin story, and then really look out, listen, be curious about people who are from all those different backgrounds. And we're really honored to celebrate through our newsletter, through these different sessions the next few weeks, so many of the amazing people from the Latino world, far and wide. And our newsletter editor just moved Monday to Madrid. So we've got now somebody who's over in Madrid, which is fabulous. And I studied in Segovia myself, but just such an incredible world of Dominican Republic and all there's just such an expansive world, so rich and diverse within that Hispanic American world. So thank you for all of you, and Paula for your leadership in bringing these people together. And we look forward to you all sharing this, and also to being part of Paula and Aaron and the different people every month who come to you from all different backgrounds. So we look forward to seeing you the latter part of October, and we'll have those dates and the topics in the newsletter for next time. So thanks again to everybody, and enjoy being celebrated the next few weeks and all year, because we very much appreciate all of you. So thanks again, everybody. So nice to see you. Randy, great job. So fabulous to have student voice as part of the work that we're doing. You can't do it without your great voice. So thanks for making a difference. Bye, everybody. Have a great one.